Good morning and welcome to Coffee with the Coalition, hosted by the Indiana Coalition to End Sexual Assault and Human Trafficking. My name is Mariah Thatch and I am the Marketing and Events Manager here at ICASA-HT. Before we get started, I'd like to go over how to participate in this event. Participants may view captioning by clicking on the Captions button at the bottom of your screen or under the More button. Next, click Show Subtitles to view captions at the bottom of your screen. So that we know who is in attendance and can call on anyone who asks questions, please be sure your first and your last names and pronouns are displayed. To use the features needed today for today's event, hover over the bottom center of your screen. You will see a series of icons buttons. The mute button can be used to unmute your microphone when you are called upon. All lines have been muted at this time. Please click on the chat button icon to open the text box on the right-hand side of your screen. During the designated Q&A sessions, you may raise your hand to comment or enter your question in the chat box. The raise hand button can be located at the bottom of your screen or under the More button. You may submit comments or questions for today's presenters in the chat box at any time during the presentation. Questions entered regarding the presentation will be addressed immediately or during the designated Q&A session. ICASA-HT staff will be monitoring the chat box to help relay questions to the presenters. If you experience any technical difficulties during this call, please send a message in the chat box to info@ICASA-HT, and a member of the ICASA-HT team will assist you. This session may include triggering content. Please feel empowered to leave this session if you feel uncomfortable in any way. This session will be recorded, and the recording will be available to participants through their original registration. If you have to leave the session for any reason, you may also view the recording through our online learning platform. Once posted, ICASA-HT will notify participants and provide instructions detailing how to access the materials. At this time, I would like to introduce the Director of the Sexual Assault Prevention and Response Program for the Indiana National Guard and the Director of the Integrated Primary Prevention Workforce at the Indiana National Guard. We will give the floor to Ricky Clark and Krista Sutton. Thank you for being with us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having us.
Hi, yes, thank you. This is Ricky Clark, and sorry, it took me a second there to get my slides up. But yes, as Mariah said, we're from the Indiana National Guard, and we're here today just to let you know a little bit more about our program, and then also the ways in which you can help as community partners with our program. And I really wanted to start off today with a video, just because I think that it points to how the military looks at sexual assault through this spoken word artist, and just it illustrates sexual violence and how it can infiltrate an organization. And so I wanted to start by that, but I did want to put out a disclaimer that it is a spoken word poem, and it does graphically illustrate sexual violence and how it infiltrates an organization. The spoken word artist is Edward Wilson. He actually retired from the Army, and he now travels the world as an educator, a trainer, and a speaker. And he uses his poetry to tackle tough topics such as abuse reduction and mental health. So at this time, I invite you to watch the video, but also to practice self-care. So if anyone needs to take a moment to prepare for the video, or even step away for the duration of it, that's perfectly fine. Feel free to do so. The video is about 6 minutes in duration.
Okay, give me 1 second. I'll get that pulled up for you. Are you guys able to hear that?
No, we can't hear it yet.
No.
Allow me to introduce myself. I'm the reason for all these briefings, the constant preaching, and the redundant teachings. I guess your leadership figures that if you constantly train, then eventually you'll be able to tame me. That's a large feat. I'm the SHA in your SHARP program. I'm the ulcer in the belly of your organization. I'm the degradation of your 7 core values. I'm the bane of your SARC's existence. I'm the real deal. You're just child's work. I am the strongest army on earth, and ironically, my recruits, they're forces from your armed forces. See, I force discord between brothers and sisters in arms, and forewarning, I'm swarming your ranks at alarming rates. Any day, I'm less than double arms distance away. All it takes is for us to be at close intervals and for her to be dressed right, wearing something tight or something short so it lets me know that she's open for my type of attention. See, she joined so she can be a part of something she can be proud of. I'm sure her parents, they thought that she would be safe amongst your ranks, but I'm the paw print crawling up your daughter or your little sister's inner thighs while she's in her sleep. I entered her room so I can enter her womb. See, alcohol normally increases my success rate. These 2 dudes, they saw me drag her. They saw me walk her in, and neither of them said a word. Their nonchalantness is the reason I'm so accomplished. They may as well be my accomplice. Intervention is my kryptonite. I was the invincible buddies bold enough to put their noses into my business. The only person with a chance of stopping me is a bystander who's willing to uphold the standard. But long as he continues to stand down, then I'll continue to stand up and raise the stats up. And oh, by the way, let your EO rep know I'm all for equal opportunity. I don't discriminate. I operate within seniors and subordinates alike. See, I was saw as a major issue once your sergeant majors were issued walking papers for taking parts in the likes of me. That's when I knew I hit the big leagues. I love to ride the coattail of the higher ranking personnel. I'm a pro at qui pro quo. In my simplest form, I come by way of a slide comment or a compliment with a drizzle of sexual content. And I'm rampant throughout your workplace. I hide my face behind jokes and jargon like, well, that's what she said. And the second I see you smile and you fail to correct me, I'm going to place the crosshairs across your head, and I'm going to cross you the next time that we cross paths. And contrary to popular belief, men are also a preference for me. I've been able to assault, I've been able to talk at least 1 in 6 into unwanted sex, and most aren't man enough. Most are too man to admit it, so I'm able to operate in iniquity without penalty. See, an assaulted man's ego is badly bruised, but it's still too huge to seek assistance, so the heinous act just sits in his system and eats away at him like cancer. There's no chance of assisting a man who insists on keeping me inside in his little secret. Most think that I'm nocturnal. I'm not. I knock whenever opportunity suits me. I'm normally suited in a familiar face. And I've heard some say that about 8 in 10 military women have met me, but only 3 in 10 will admit it, probably because they're afraid that you'll think they're the reason why the crime is committed. Because you make comments like, well, that's what happens when you wear those rape clothes. When you walk says I'm willing to let you assault/harass me against my will. And everyone knows that permission and promiscuous is paternal twins. You can't blame him if she was out after 1 a.m. It's common knowledge that all body parts are up for grabs after midnight. She met me because she kept a grown man parked in a friend zone for too long when she knew all along all he wanted to do was break his parking brake off in her. She should have known better than to trust someone who called themselves a friend. And let me give you some other reasons why she didn't report it. She didn't report it because the last time she was the subject of something similar, she was subject to questioning like she was the prime suspect. She didn't know. She had no clue that harassment was punishable by finger pointing. She said they held enough fingers in her face to outfit a million hands. She learned that her shorts would be called to the stand as a cotton material witness to testify against her, that her legs were out after midnight. She learned that in the land of the free, harassment was punishment for having the nerve to choose your own wardrobe. She learned that she could be convicted of having an enticing figure. Now go figure. Assaulters are people just like you. We don't deserve to be tempted. In case you hadn't sniffed it. I'm sexual harassment assault. And if you don't learn to control me, I'll continue to be the oasis of hate surrounding your ranks. I'm the new age form of fratricide. I'm the sum of division. And you'll never be able to solve me if you don't stick together. I'm a combat minimizer. And until you learn to defeat me, you'll never be able to defeat your country's enemies. I want to thank you. For your ongoing support.
Okay, so get the slides back up. I did want to ask if there's anybody that wants to share maybe your initial thoughts that you had about that video, either in chat or Mariah, can they come off mute to talk?
Yeah, they should be able to come off mute.
Okay. So is there anybody that wants to share your initial thoughts on that video? Okay, so the reason why I wanted all of you to see that video is that I think it speaks to the stance that the military has taken on sexual assault. And as we get through some of the slides, you'll see even more of the different things that we are doing as a whole, from all the way up to the Department of the Army, Department of Defense level with sexual assault. And with that video, that was actually produced a couple years ago, and it was sent out through the Army side of the military and shown to the masses. So everyone was able to view that video. And before I get started with the slides, I just wanted to take a second to thank Beth and Kelly for asking us to be here today. And then also Mariah for your support with getting us prepared for today. So thank you for that. And with that, I'll go ahead and start with what the SAPR program is. So the Sexual Assault Prevention Response Program for the National Guard, we are survivor centric. So what I mean by that is we have little to do with subjects of sexual assault or the perpetrators. We are solely for victims, so we are a resource for them. We provide response, resources, and support, and we only take reports of sexual assault. So on the active duty side, typically those programs for sexual assault and sexual harassment are combined. On the National Guard side, those are two separate programs. So my program is, we deal with sexual assault, whereas the Equal Opportunity Office, they are the ones that would take sexual harassment complaints. Okay, so here is a here's a snapshot of the Indiana National Guard. I wanted to include this just to get an idea of how many soldiers and airmen we have in Indiana. So right now we sit at approximately 11,000 soldiers and airmen. But then we also have approximately 963 technicians. And so when we talk about soldiers and airmen at that 11,000, those are our traditional soldiers. So the 1 week in a month, 2 weeks out of the year, that's that number. And then that approximately 963 technicians, those could be civilians, which the one that says DoD civilians Title V, those are civilians. And then dual status, which are Title 32. So those are individuals that wear the uniform as well as serve on that technician side. And so right now, I am what they call Title V civilian for my capacity as the Sexual Assault Prevention Response Program Director. But I also still serve on the traditional side. I know you probably saw mine and Krista's bios. So we both are similar in that we're Title V Monday through Friday, and then we still serve on our traditional side as well. We have service members in all 92 counties throughout Indiana. The mission is, our soldiers, we train, we deploy, and we participate in missions outside of the state and overseas, and then return. And the reason why I put return in red there is that a lot of times we do have service members that may experience sexual violence overseas, whether they're in a deployed environment or a training exercise. And then they come home, and that's when they make their report to us. And so we still take those cases as well. And then I wanted to also put this stat in here. So in CY21, that's the most up to date that we have. Approximately 8.4% of active duty women and 1.5% of active duty men indicated experiencing at least one past year incident of unwanted sexual contact. And then I have the one there. I do have references at the end. If you wanted to look at these reports, they're available for everyone to look at if you're interested. And then an estimated 4.6% of reserve component women, so around 7,531 service members, and 0.7% of men, 4,306 service members experienced past unwanted sexual contact. Okay. And next we'll talk about who we serve. So definitely National Guard service members who were sexually assaulted in a duty status, meaning they were training, they were doing their weekend commitment, they were in a duty status, and also non-duty status. So even if they were in their civilian capacity, we still accept cases from them as well. National Guard members who were sexually assaulted before enlistment or commissioning. So even if the sexual assault happened prior to them even enlisting in the military, we will still take those cases. We will still help them with resources. And then here's one a lot of people don't realize is that we also will take cases from dependents of National Guard members who are at least 18 years or older. So we don't take any reports from minors. We refer those to civilian agencies. But if they're 18 years or older and they're dependent of a service member, we will take those cases. And then the technician employees that we talked about before, we also take cases from them. And then National Guard members sexually assaulted while performing active duty. So like I had mentioned earlier, even if they are on a deployment, if they're at a school and they come home and they want to file a report with us, then we accept those cases. And a lot of times we do see that with the cases that we receive because they feel more comfortable in their home state and reporting it here than where they are, whether it's training or overseas. And we also have reporting options, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on these, but I thought it was important that you at least have some kind of idea what these look like in case you have somebody that comes to you that also identifies as a National Guard member, and just so that you have a little bit of knowledge about what those reporting types look like. One of the things I really want to point out is that I know sometimes service members are reluctant to want to reach out because they think that it might require something additional of them. But if they call us as on the SAPR side of the house, so we have SARCs and victim advocates, which we'll get into what those are. We have complete confidentiality with them unless they are reporting harm to themselves or someone else. But as far as the sexual assault goes, it does not obligate them to anything if they call and talk to us to find out more information about how we can assist them. So very first bullet, the survivor decides the reporting type. So we give them the option of how they want to move forward if they want to make a report with their sexual assault. So we have the restricted option. That one, command is not notified. There's no investigation done unless if command is notified, then the command does have to report it to law enforcement. But outside of the command being notified by someone else or the survivor, it remains confidential and there is no investigation. Then on the unrestricted reporting side, command is notified Law enforcement also must be called. That's coordinated with our office. And it also entitles them to some additional resources that on the restricted side they don't receive just because of the confidentiality of their case. But for unrestricted, they're also eligible for a protective order and an expedited transfer on our side. And so the protective order, I'm sure everyone is familiar with that, but for the expedited transfer, that just means that they are able to be moved out of their unit within 72 hours. Okay, if it's approved by the command, and they can request that the subject be moved versus themselves. It's just really, it's another point of where we allow them to decide. Ultimately, their commander makes the decision, but they can voice what they would like to have happen, whether they would like to be moved or they would like the subject moved. And then this last bullet here, those are independent reports. So those are reports that go to the command somehow outside of the survivor reporting it. So maybe they told a friend or they told a supervisor of them, but they do not want to make a report. That is when we call those independent reports, because once the command is notified of a sexual assault, they have to notify law enforcement. The victim or the survivor does not have to participate in that investigation, but the command is required to notify law enforcement. And that, again, is coordinated through our office. Okay, that was about the video. Okay, well, I want to go back to that in just a second. But just to finish this thought, regardless of the reporting option, all survivors are offered victim advocacy, medical care, legal assistance, and behavioral health care. So this is another point where they are able to choose if they want everything, if they want pieces. We really leave it up to them to decide what they would like to receive moving forward and what's going to be best for them as they go through this process. Okay, so for the video, so very, very powerful. That was so powerful, really shows how language can be used to convey a vital message. Okay, if you click the video camera, all right. All right, that looks like the end of that. Okay. All right, so the next portion of the slides I want to discuss is something that happened a few years ago in 2020. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with Vanessa Guillen, but this is something I wanted to include in here because this has spurred a lot of change for our programs, for both Krista and I's programs, and has really provided a lot more emphasis on our programs and a lot more resources across the nation for sexual assault and sexual harassment. So Vanessa Guillen, she was an American soldier. She was stationed at Fort Hood, and she went missing in April of 2020. And they looked for her and finally found her. She was deceased not far from the base. And it has been reported that she was bludgeoned to death by another soldier, Aaron David Robinson, and many related this act to the fact that Guillen was being sexually harassed and was going to report Robinson for adultery. So this spurred an investigation into what happened at Fort Hood. There is a documentary on this on Netflix that has a lot of information, and it focuses on her family, and it goes into a lot of detail about the time when this was occurring, the time before it occurred, the things that she was experiencing and telling her family, and then what her family went through as a result of her death. And so Fort Hood did have an investigation that was conducted in the summer of 2020. they had an independent body come in and do the investigation. That independent body had 9 findings. I didn't list all the 9 findings, but at the end of my slides, I do have a reference so that you can go and look at all of that if you are interested or would like to see those. But I did put 3 here that I thought were very important and also that have drastically impacted the way the SAPR program is today within the entire DoD. So number 1, the implementation of the SHARP program at Fort Hood has been ineffective due to a command climate that failed to instill SHARP program core values below the brigade level. So in that, they're recognizing that command has not made this program a high priority. That has led to a lot of the deficiencies that they found. And then also the Army SHARP program is structurally flawed. So this was that there just really was not enough individuals to really service the service members that needed our assistance and our support. And you will see in a couple slides how they're addressing that. Then number 9, the command climate at Fort Hood has been permissive of sexual harassment and sexual assault. So, you know, basically this goes back to that video too of, hey, if I'm allowed to continue to operate in this organization, I will. And if you're not going to stop me, then we'll just continue on. So they also recognize that in one of their findings. So as a result of that investigation, 14 U.S. Army leaders, including commanders and other leaders at Fort Hood, were fired or suspended in an effort to correct a years-long culture of sexual assault and a pattern of violence at the base. So that was huge. That they found that there were deficiencies, and then they were also holding people accountable for that. And then also, as a result of that investigation, in February of 2021, the president ordered the Secretary of Defense to establish an independent review commission to end sexual assault in the military. Though that IRC commission, the independent review commission, they delivered 82 recommendations, and they divided those into 4 lines of effort: accountability, prevention, climate and culture, and victim care and support. To the SecDef, which were all approved in October of the same year. So there were 82 recommendations, but I'll just let you know that there were several sub recommendations for every recommendation that they had. So again, I didn't put them all here, but at the end of my presentation, there is references where you can go and look at all those if you're interested in that. But I did put 4 here that were very important and instrumental into our program on the National Guard side, as well as DoD. But 4.1, optimize the victim care and support workforce. Expand victim service options to meet the needs of all survivors of sexual assault and sexual harassment. Increase access to the visibility of civilian community-based care, and establish a dedicated primary prevention workforce. So as we go through the rest of these slides, we're going to discuss each of those points more. So here is our current SAPR workforce. You can see the Adjutant General is ultimately responsible for the SAPR program. And then we have the Director of the Joint Staff, which is my boss, and Krista's boss, that's over our programs. And then we have the SAPR Director and SAPR Deputy. I will tell you that previous to the implementation of this in 2022 of getting new individuals, it was myself and my deputy. And we were the only 2 full-time personnel in the state that did anything with a sexual assault program. We did have if you look down in the lower right-hand corner, the approximately 60 collateral duty SAPR victim advocates. We had those as well. And let me back, we also had our wing SARCs. But so we had 4 that basically for all 11,000 soldiers and airmen and 900 technicians, there were 4 of us that did this work outside of the collateral duty victim advocates, which is an additional duty for them. So very happy to say that that we did get an entire new workforce and individuals that are full-time dedicated to providing response and support to survivors of sexual assault. And we have those located throughout Indiana. So we have our North Sexual Assault Response Coordinator and Victim Advocate. They are located in Lafayette. And then we have our Central Region who are located in Indianapolis. We have both a Sexual Assault Response Coordinator and a Victim Advocate there as well. And then we also have one located in the South, and they are located at Camp Atterbury, Indiana. And then we have our 2 wing SARCs, one in Terre Haute, one in Fort Wayne. And then our Terre Haute location also has a victim advocate there as well. And then again, I just want to reference that we have around 60 collateral duty SAPR victim advocates that are located throughout the entire state as well. So those are our service members that have different jobs, but they have volunteered to be sexual assault victim advocates. Now, for any of our victim advocates serving in this position, whether they're collateral duty or full-time, we all have to go through training, and also get credentialed through a national credentialing NOVA. And also they have to pass background checks. They're considered positions of significant trust. So they have a screening that surpasses what just a normal soldier would have to go through. There's additional screenings for that that goes up before they can advocate or perform their duties in that role. Okay, and so on this slide, I wanted to go over some of our organic resources that we have in the National Guard. So we have our sexual assault response coordinators. And like I said, those are located in the 3 regions and then also at our wings. And we have our victim advocates. So our SARCs and victim advocates, both, they take cases and they both provide resources for victims. They do training, they go and talk to commanders. We have events throughout the year to bring awareness. I'm sure everyone does SAPM in April. We also recognize that. We also do Denim Day in April. And so those are really the sexual assault response coordinators and victim advocates are those that facilitate our program throughout the organization. And also they are who responds to reports of sexual assault and provides their advocacy. We have behavioral health. We have a great relationship with behavioral health. Those are individuals that are within the organization that are trained to provide behavioral health to service members. They are short-term care. So typically we will have them in addition to long-term care for our victims or survivors. We also have chaplains that are throughout the organization as well that we offer if they would like to speak to a chaplain. We have what we call line of duties, and those are similar to workman's comp. So the survivor has to be in a duty status at the time of the incident or at the time of re-aggravation. So I'll just take a second to talk about that. So we talked about being in a duty status, meaning they're on some type of training, they're doing their 1 weekend a month, they are deployed. So when the incident happened, they have to have been on some kind of duty status for us to offer a line of duty. Or if the initial incident didn't occur while they were in a duty status, but while they were at training, something re-aggravated the condition, then we can also do an LOD for them. And if we get an LOD for them, that can provide them with paid physical or behavioral health care. So very important for us to work with them and get this completed and sent up for them if they qualify for it. Now, if they do not qualify for a line of duty, we still help to get them resources, and that's where all of you come in and the community based providers we work with to find care on the civilian side for them. Or sometimes it's through insurance, but we've really not had a case where we have not been able to connect them with resources. Okay, and then we talked about advocacy and then the short-term behavioral health services. We also have what's called the Office of Complex Investigations, and that is an investigative body that's trained to specifically investigate sexual assault reports. And in order for them to come and investigate one of our reports, this is requested by the Adjutant General after local law enforcement has closed or declined to take a case. So just to explain that a little bit further. So back in 2012, I think is when this changed. Previous to 2012, commanders were able to investigate incidents of sexual assault on their own. So they basically appointed an officer who met a rank requirement to investigate these cases. In 2012, they recognized that this was not a sufficient way to investigate sexual assault cases, that they were way more complex and needed way more sensitivity than just a officer that met a rank requirement investigating these. So typically for the National Guard side, most of our cases are going to go to local law enforcement first. And so if local law enforcement, for whatever reason, decides to decline the case or says there's insufficient evidence to continue to investigate the case, then they will let our legal office know. Our legal office at that point in time can ask TAG if he would like the Office of Complex Investigations to come out and investigate the case. And if Adjutant General agrees, which he does for pretty much every case we have, request them to come investigate, then they will come and do an investigation again, like I said, with trained investigators to investigate sexual assault reports. And the reason why we had that second body is because we were, as an organization, was noticing that a lot of times with local law enforcement, some things on the civilian side may not be considered a sexual assault, but are on the military side. And so we needed that additional piece to investigate for our cases specifically, because we don't have criminal investigation division or a military investigative body on the National Guard side. So this is why they developed the Office of Complex Investigations, make sure that we are able to investigate every sexual assault to the fullest extent within the organization. Another important piece for the civilian side versus the Office of Complex Investigation is that, and the reason why we go the civilian side first is because that is a criminal investigation. So they can be held criminally responsible for the sexual assault, whereas the Office of Complex Investigation, that is an administrative investigation. And so also that standard is not beyond a reasonable doubt, but a preponderance of the evidence. So when we have the Office of Complex Investigations come in and investigate subsequent to a local law enforcement investigation, there may be different results because of that. So we were definitely happy to have this secondary investigative body for our service members. Okay, and then the next bullet there is Special Victims Counsel. And so what Special Victims Counsel are, those are military attorneys that solely represent survivors. So they don't represent the command, they don't represent the subject, they solely represent that victim. And they are regionally based in different states, and they take cases within our state, just so we make sure that they are able to completely advocate for that individual with no limitations or worries about command or any of that. So we really do that regionally based. They don't represent somebody within the same state. Okay, and then we have our 24/7 monitored number. We put this out on a number of different things, all of our websites, marketing materials, cards, we have QR codes. We try to distribute this to get it down to the lowest level so that anyone who experiences sexual violence or sexual assault has the ability to get a hold of a victim advocate or SARC 24/7. So this is only manned by victim advocates or SARCs, and it is a 24/7 monitored number. So they can call that and receive assistance immediately. And then we also have the DoD Safe Helpline, and we have that number. It has a lot of different options for service members to call to find out more information. They can chat on that. If they're not comfortable, going straight to someone in their state immediately, they can call that number and get advice and resources. And then we also do referrals to civilian agencies. Okay, so civilian resources, that is our primary for National Guard members. I let you know on the previous slide some of our organic resources that we have, but as you can see, those are very limited. So we do rely a lot on you and the community service providers for National Guard members. And that's in terms of crisis response, medical response, law enforcement response, and ongoing behavioral health care. So really every avenue, we are reaching out to those civilian resources for assistance. So again, that's really, I am grateful for us to be able to talk to you guys today, just so you know a little bit more about us, but then also, very interested to know if there's things that we also need to know when we are referring service members to any of your resources. And we truly, sincerely thank you for what you do and for assisting us daily in our battle with sexual assault, and also providing service members with resources that they truly need and want to help them as they go along on their recovery process. And as I stated before, here are the references that I mentioned previously. So if you are interested in finding out more, there's links to those reports to where you can look at the full report and all that was on there. And then one thing I didn't put on here was that the Netflix documentary for Vanessa Guillen, but that is a really good documentary on Netflix if you're interested in seeing that as well. And with that, I welcome any questions for what we've already covered. Okay, so I don't see any in the chat and I'm not hearing any. So at this time, I will turn it over to Ms. Krista Sutton.
Hi, good morning. Ricky had asked me to be here just
Sorry,
to
we
talk
do
about.
actually have a question.
Oh, great. Please.
It says, have you seen an increase or decrease in assaults? Oh, Ricky, you're on mute.
Yep.
So I will say that we've been pretty consistent over the last few years with the number of cases that we've had. You can, varying reports that you can see if you go to sapper.mil, they have DoD overall. So, and then it will also break them down into Army, Navy, and Air Force, excuse me, and then also the National Guard. So, and it has, you can see all of that on sapper.mil, and it provides you with graphical charts, all of that, so you can see through the different years what that looks like. But I will say, as a state, ours have remained consistent over the last, I would say, 5 years.
And please ask a question anytime. Please don't worry about interrupting me. But so like Ricky talked about earlier in regards to Vanessa Guillen, a part and probably the largest part of that independent review commission's findings were that, our sexual assault response program was pretty great, but it was really poor at prevention. So they did a great job of helping our survivors, of, making sure they get the resources they need, but they really didn't have the time, as Ricky had said, especially when we talk about 4 people to serve 12,000 people, to really focus on getting left of sexual assault and sexual harassment and many of the other harmful behaviors we see, such as suicide, substance abuse, domestic violence, which also can be tied back to some of that sexual violence in a lot of cases as well. So out of that independent review commission was born my program, which is integrated primary prevention. And so our mission is really that we want to reduce, preferably eliminate, but sometimes that's a little tougher, all harmful behaviors. So that would be sexual harassment, sexual assault, suicide, domestic violence, child abuse, hazing, bullying, those toxic command climates that we saw at Fort Hood, that were recognized as one of the factors in contributing to high sexual assault and sexual harassment rates on their base. So when this came up, I was hired maybe a year and a half ago. And then we have a workforce of 10, really 11, because there's an attorney that is on my team as well, that serves both my program and Ricky's program as a consultant. But there's myself. I have my deputy director, Sylvia Maxner, who really focuses on community outreach. And then I have 4 analysts. One of those is Sheena Linville, who is really focused on domestic violence, sexual assault, and sexual harassment. And I know that she's attended many of your meetings. And then we have one AIR person who goes to both wings and tries to outreach the individual squadrons and groups, and try to implement any trainings that we find or bring together and access, resources that they may need, that they feel like they're lacking. And then we have 3 Army specialists that serve 143 units within the state. Ricky, you can go to the next slide if you like. Sorry, I don't have control. So I think probably most of you really know what primary prevention is, but within the Army, our first goal is really to kind of look at the individuals. We did assessments. We looked at as much data as we possibly could, because we wanted to see kind of an initial understanding of what is the issue specifically in Indiana. So we looked at things like, we have a unit risk inventory. That's an anonymous survey that we give to our soldiers within Indiana that asks things like, have you experienced sexual assault in the last 12 months? Have you experienced sexual harassment in the last 12 months? And what we see on those unit risk inventories is that people are typically more honest, because they're not afraid to say, oh yeah, that did happen to me. So we have a better idea of what the prevalence is when we use those anonymous surveys at that level. So one of the things that I recognized kind of out of the gate was when I asked the equal opportunity advisor, hey, or the SEAM, how many reports of sexual harassment have we had in the last 5 years? And they said 0. There's 0 sexual harassment in the Indiana National Guard. And I was like, wow, we're like really amazing or really terrible at kind of making our soldiers and airmen feel comfortable reporting, one, or even knowing how. So when I first came on, I did town halls where I probably spoke to maybe 3,000 soldiers. And then I also attended conferences on the air side. And I said, I just want to ask the question, how many of you think there's sexual harassment in your units right now? And 40 people would raise their hand, right? So I'm like, how many people know how to report that? And the majority did not. They didn't realize that it was separate from Ricky's team, from reporting there. There is no wrong door. Obviously, if they were to come to Ricky or any of her staff and say, hey, I'm being sexually harassed, they would hand them off to the right people. But they really didn't understand exactly what constitutes sexual harassment, what happened. So, one of the first things we did was create a new complaint process where someone can just get on a public website and say, hey, I want some more information about this, about harassment or discrimination. I want to be linked with the person who I should be reporting to, which would be our EOAs. And so we saw a significant increase in reports because then people understood how to report and what constituted sexual harassment. So that's been a positive thing. Also on the DoD side, when Ricky was talking about certain things on the military side are different than civilian side. Well, now sexual harassment is a UCMJ offense, which means it's illegal on the military side. So it is a criminal act, and it's treated as such now. So within the military, if you have a sexual harassment investigation coming along on that side of the house, you also will get what we call an Article 15, and you have a 15-6 investigation that will say, hey, you are violating the law, but you are also violating the Army values. And so that gives us 2 investigations at the same time, so that even if the sexual harassment side does not result in some sort of punitive action, because really it's a mediation. How do we make the victim whole, that sort of thing. 15-6 is punitive, so they can lose rank or just be kicked out of the military. So we are taking it more seriously, which I think is definitely positive. So moving on, we also are going from unit to unit, talking to the full-time staff, talking to our soldiers and airmen and saying, hey, what are we missing here? What is going on? What's your culture like within your unit? Do you feel comfortable reporting something like sexual harassment or sexual assault? So we have a climate survey that we push out every year, and it kind of says like, hey, do you trust your leadership enough to report that? Do you think you would be punished? Do you think it would be punitive against you if you came forward and said, yes, this person is harassing me or assaulted me? Would they believe you? That sort of thing. So we're trying to get in there and see exactly, okay, what are there certain units maybe within the state where they really don't feel comfortable reporting? And if so, what kinds of things can we bring in there to inform not only the soldiers, but the command, and say, hey, Commander, your people are saying they don't trust you. They say, I would not report this to you. So what can we do to build that trust? So we're also trying to, as a unit, the whole organization, as the National Guard within Indiana, trying to improve our command climate, our culture within, the organization, saying, please come forward. How do we, start building that trust again and saying, hey, it's okay if you come forward. We believe you. We, want you to report. We have so many resources out there, and we don't want predators within our ranks. So please tell us when that is happening so that we can address it. And then in terms of the community, our hope is to build those partnerships where our soldiers and airmen live, because we see them 2 days a month. The community has them 28 days a month. We know that, sexual assault is not just a military issue, obviously, is why we're here. And sometimes, that sexual violence occurs within their community, maybe they won't tell us. So we want to make sure they know where they can go in their community, and that they have that good, strong support there. If you want to go to the next slide, we can do that. Thank you so much. So Yeah, so some of the things we're doing right now on the prevention side of the house is just, again, streamlining some of those processes to report sexual harassment, sexual assault, really more the sexual harassment side of things. And then, we want more pathways for our service members to access, those resources. So we want to create, we created a Get Help website where it has all those harmful behaviors that I was talking about, just access to advocates or education about what that might be, or ways they can get help if they don't feel comfortable coming to us. Because we have wonderful resources, we have wonderful advocates, but sometimes they just don't feel safe coming to us. And so we want to make sure that they know where they can go. And that's for all things, whether that be suicide, domestic violence, substance abuse, sexual assault, sexual harassment, discrimination, all those things. How do we get them to where they need to go so that they can be safe and get the help they need? Some of the things on the training side, we brought Stacey Rose, who was a wonderful consent trainer. She does most of the Title IX programming at the colleges across the country. So, kind of talking more about some of those things that lead to that sexual violence, the misunderstanding of what consent is, how do we, kind of implement that, but then also a call to men, kind of along the same lines of coaching boys into men. How do we also talk to our younger soldiers, actually all probably our soldiers, and saying, hey, it may not be you, right? You may not be the predator. I hope not, right? But what are you doing when you come across those behaviors that are wrong? Some of those early indicators, are you stopping it in its tracks? Are you using those bystander interventions? Are you saying absolutely not? That's not acceptable way to talk, to act, to treat others? Or are you just staying quiet? So really trying to increase that skill level and that, ability for our soldiers and airmen to intervene when they see something that is going on that is wrong and against our values. So we also recently looked at Buddy Aid for first response. So that's an NGB developed program that really talks about ways to teach just any soldier, any airman, hey, if someone says to you, hey, I've been sexually assaulted or this thing's happened to me, what ways can we kind of talk to that person initially? Obviously, our goal is to get them to a victim advocate, to the SARC, to the resources they need. But what are some ways that we can talk to that person that makes them feel seen, heard, respected, and that they'd be more open to going and getting the help they need? We also have something called CARE training that we're bringing to Indiana that talks about how do we build connectedness and relationships within our units? How do we kind of improve our leadership abilities at all levels so that we get to know our soldiers, we know their baseline, we know when something's off, we know when they may need help, but also we build that respect among all of our members so that, because we know that that is something when we have a positive command climate, when we have that connectedness with others, we know that that we have fewer incidents of sexual harassment and sexual assault. So we're looking to hopefully build up those protective factors over time, obviously. And so we definitely want to implement this training. So we're just kind of finding these more engaging trainings, these trainings that kind of hit some of those preventative measures kind of across the board on harmful behaviors. So we're not just focusing on one thing at a time, but we're really building up those prevention efforts to address all of those harmful behaviors. Yes, you can go to the next one, please. Okay, so Ricky had said you guys were kind of asking like, hey, what are some of the ways that maybe your organization and community organizations could kind of partner with us? So Sylvia Maxner is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Governor's Challenge. Sorry, I was looking at the chat. I'm sorry, Whitney had asked, you mentioned someone could request a transfer to happen as quickly as 72 hours. Is there an option for a safe, different place to sleep, stay on site same day if needed? Of course. So if somebody felt like they were in danger, even though there may not be a process to, hey, you can go, most command teams will respect that something is going on, something is wrong, even if they don't have a good read on it, they will make sure that that person who's in trouble either is able to go home or is able to sleep somewhere where they feel safe.
I was just going to add to that. So of course, if they're in a training environment, they are able to make those moves and accommodate what the victim survivor is comfortable with. And a lot of times that's when we also come in so that we can provide an advocate to ascertain what those preferences are from that victim or survivor. But when they are not in a training environment, that's where it gets a little more tricky. And again, my program does not deal with domestic violence, but we have had situations where service members are just not comfortable. Maybe they live alone and they aren't comfortable going home or those kinds of things. And that's really when we try to utilize the community partners, you guys, in trying to help facilitate that. We also talk to them about, do they have relatives or friends or someone that they feel comfortable going to stay with. But if none of that is available, that we really do try to reach out to the community partners and see if there's a safe place that we can help get coordinated for them.
Yes. So, well, thank you so much for that question. But one of the things, oh, okay.
Sorry.
You quick.
Trying to get mute.
No worries.
Okay.
So, one of the things we are, as that part of the Governor's Challenge, which is a VA SAMHSA collaboration, within, all of the states are welcome to it. Indiana has a specific team that we're addressing. It's really to reduce veteran suicide, but I think it meets a lot of these other prevention efforts that we are trying to put out in terms of collaborating with community partners and identifying our military members, our National Guard members, when they are in the community so that we can link them with our resources. If that's wanted, we would never, make them do that, but we just want to make sure that they have all of the resources at their fingertips. So, we've been talking with healthcare providers, and like 211, 988, the, Indiana Department of Veterans Affairs. We're looking for them to just ask the question, not are you a veteran? Because the tough part is a lot of our National Guard members don't identify as a veteran. And so if you ask them, they wouldn't say yes. But if you say, have you or anyone in your family ever served in the military? The way that we ask that question opens the door for them to say, well, yeah, I do serve in the military and I'm in the National Guard, right? And then that way we can bring our resources to community partners, let them know what we offer within the Indiana National Guard, and hopefully make sure that they have all of their options out there. And, I think one of the things that we, when Sheena and I were talking also were, hey, what things are you guys doing out in the community now? What programs maybe are you guys pushing that might be good fits for the National Guard as well, and things that you think might be helpful? And I specifically think about ROTC and RSP programs. And what that is just kind of our younger, soldiers, those still in high school, those in college, going through our commissioning programs, or still waiting to go off to basic training. And we hold those soldiers at colleges where they train. Are you guys in that kind of field? Are you guys in the colleges doing bystander training, doing those, like coaching, boys into men programs? Are there some things that you guys have found in terms of like your social media or other things that you find really effective since you've been doing this forever. I would love to see if there are prevention, efforts that you guys are making, or have that you think might be something we could utilize within the National Guard as well. So those would kind of be my ask, like, hey, is there some things that maybe we wouldn't be aware of that you think would be effective in helping us in prevention efforts of sexual assault and sexual violence? But yes. Don't expect an answer now, but just if there are ways that we could coordinate, that would be wonderful. But I think that's really all I have, unless, I know Ricky has my phone number. That's my personal cell. So if anybody ever had questions or need anything, please call me anytime.
Oh, I think I see something in the chat. Oh, okay. So I just wanted to say, to echo what Krista said, that is my information there, my phone number and my email. So if there's anything that you still had questions on, maybe you didn't ask today, or after you leave this, you have questions on, please feel free to give me a call or send me an email. I'm happy to dialogue with you. And also, if there is anything, suggestions or any of that you have for us, I welcome those as well. And again, I just wanted to thank ICASA HT for having us today. And I hope everyone has a great day. And I'll hand it over to Mariah.
Thank you so much,